Okay, so hello everybody, welcome to my presentation. Mine is on using Pi-hole as a cybersecurity tool. All of this will be explained as we progress through the presentation. So I'm of the belief that the business of cybersecurity starts at home. So, yep, we might be working in the industry, but we actually need to internalize a lot of the lessons and practice what we preach at home as well, not just at work. So, part of my contents, I have the aim, the why, the what, the importance of it, defenses, methodology, bit of the architecture, a demonstration, my findings, summary, and more importantly, some further developments I would have liked to have done had I had more time. Okay, what's our aim? Our aim is to install DNS sync holding software into commodity hardware. So Pi-hole, it blocks trackers, malware, and adware. Also, our aim is to generate awareness and understanding of where web traffic flows, where web telemetry data flows as well. And that will form part of the presentation too. We also want to generate understanding to people about the potential risks of bad actors and big tech tracking your web activities. So why use a Raspberry Pi? Well, I find it to be accessible, cheap commodity hardware, which runs a variety of Linux systems. Pi-hole software runs on multiple Linux systems on multiple architectures, and lots of powerful software packages have been ported to this device. There's a lot that you can do with it. So part of this project is about DNS sinkholes, but a little intro on DNS as well, if we're not overly familiar with it. So the DNS, or the domain name system, it translates the human readable domain names, for example, Amazon.com, into the machine you might encounter 192.168 and so forth, that IP address. So the Pi-hole, it's a network-wide ad blocker. So rather than installing ad blockers on every single browser on every single device, you can point every single device to the Pi-hole, and it will block advertisements. I know for a fact it also works on non-traditional hardware, like for example games consoles. So if you're a bit of a gamer, PS3, PS4, Xbox Series, it blocks advertisements on that, and it blocks advertisements on smart TVs. And this is a trend, a disturbing trend, by the way, that half the smart TVs on markets deploy advertisements. So this is a way of blocking that and potentially blocking malware or telemetry data. So it works as an internal private DNS server for your network. So it's, for most people, it's running on your router, but your router doesn't know where the advertisements are. Pi-hole does. It maintains a list of all these bad domains. So it will take in any queries from ad serving domains and deny them access. So ads won't be downloaded. The effects of which will be visible later on in the presentation. Why is this important? It disrupts the flow of unwelcome traffic. By providing that incorrect DNS resolution, redirects clients attempting to connect to malicious domains or otherwise unwanted content. It also restricts access of specific sites that violate organization policies. And I've had that experience in other organizations as well. Pardon me. So when a user tries to access a sinkhole URL, they'll land on a custom web page. And furthermore, it's so capable it can block advertisements for the entire enterprise network. And one of the things that was relevant was how it is able to be used. A DNS sinkhole, not the Pi-hole, but the sinkhole, was able to be used in torpedoing the WannaCry ransomware attack. So the researcher found an unregistered domain in the malware's code. He registered it to create a DNS sinkhole so he could collect additional data. By doing so, he unintentionally activated a kill switch that significantly slowed the malware's further spread, giving experts time to intervene. So there's an element of defensive measure in this as well. I also try to align it to what the Essential 8 says. And as part of the Essential 8, there's this aspect of user application hardening. And part of that there's multiple levels of maturity. Part of it says Web browsers do not process web advertisements from the internet. So you're hardening your network, be it your home network or enterprise one, by deploying something like this. So my methodology. I installed Pi-hole software onto that Raspberry Pi, which was running a flavor of Linux. Now, after suitable configuration, I connected it to my home router. And with routers, they sometimes randomly reassign IP addresses. So I ensured that the IP address for the Raspberry Pi was reserved and permanent. So it'll always be that one. And all the devices on my network, my phone, everything, laptops, all of their DNS requests go to the Pi-hole. The Pi has a specific IP address. So forgive the poor cabling, but cable management is not my forte. But if I can just highlight it, there's the Raspberry Pi connected to my router, and it's connected directly via the wired 1 gigabit connection. I then installed Splunk server on an Ubuntu virtual machine in the cloud. Now, again, there will be a demonstration. I then installed a universal data forwarder on the Raspberry Pi. It sends data to the indexer in the Splunk server. The Splunk Pi-hole app processes the data and creates these visualizations. And this is a custom app created by the community. Bit of the architecture. So I've got my devices and we're browsing the internet. So a DNS request will come through. But now that I've directed it to the Pi, it goes to Pi-hole, it goes to the Pi-hole, which then checks the request against a block list. If it's on the list, it's blocked. And if it's permitted, carry on browsing the internet as normal. And also, just to link, on my home network, based in Australia, the Splunk Universal Forwarder software forwards the logs to the VM in the cloud, and it's almost real time as well, part of my demonstration. So, without any further ado, here is the dashboard for the Pi-hole, but it's not really interactive. This is, well, with Splunk, it can be used for multiple purposes, but for this instance, it's running this special software, this app, which visualizes the data. So here is a graph of all the web activity on my home network today, and even devices and their activities as well, and even the top 10 blocked queries. Now, I'm going to click on here. This is one of my IP addresses. This is one of my MacBooks, so this is one I use for work. And we can drill down a bit. We can actually look at what's been blocked and where my requests for data have been going and so forth. So just browsing this map, it tells me where I've been. There's a lot of CDNs, content delivery networks, by the way. But what's even more relevant is if I go here, query refused, it will provide a list of all the domains the Pi-hole has blocked. So as you can see, quite regularly, requests were blocked. So there I am browsing, and there's quite a bit on Google, the biggest offender, and Mozilla sending telemetry data to them. All that's been blocked. And as you can see here, there's a breakdown of all the domains that have been blocked. Okay. Right. What I did though, I collected the data over the course of 10 days, exported it out as a comma separated file, so a CSV file. And here are the top 20 domains that were blocked. Basically, from what I can see, there's a disturbing trend, I don't know if anyone is aware, of Google tracking us, of big tech tracking us, as we can see here. So these were easily extracted from the software, But also this could be applied with regards to bad actors tracking us as well. And it's a way to create an awareness and understanding of where our browser data is going. I mean, I had a vague idea, but if you show this to somebody who's not super technical, but who uses devices every day, you'd be thinking, oh, Google's tracking me a lot. I wonder why I get those advertisements. It's just, it clicks, creates that awareness. So in addition to blocking the tracking software and advertisements, I really actually noticed an increase in browsing speed. It's simple fact that the less junk data was received. Now, these following tests, I did them using Google Chrome, which is quite a notorious browser, using the developer tools and by uncaching the data. So I went on news.com.au, popular website. Before Pi-hole, there were 622 requests, that much data transferred, and it took 21 seconds to load. And as you can see here, there's advertisements galore. And if your computer's a little bit older, it will cause it to slow down. After the Pi-hole, a huge reduction in requests, 122, and it loads in 2.6 seconds instead. So huge reduction there. The age, local to Melbourne, 585 requests, 31 seconds to load, and lots of advertisements. With the Pi-hole, advertisements gone, 78 requests, 11.28 seconds. One more, The Verge, quite notorious, 657 requests, 30 seconds to load. Remove the advertisements using the Pi-hole, 53 requests, loads in 6.4 seconds. So, over the course of 10 days, this little device, it processed over 1,208,407 queries, DNS queries, of which the Pi-hole blocked 77,000. So that relates to around 6% of all web traffic. So that's in itself is rather concerning, and I think people should be aware that so much of your stuff is actually junk that's going out there. Website requests speeds were increased, so reduced by an average of 400%, resulted in a safer, faster browsing experience. I think the key is, it's kind of linked to the previous presentation about education. I think it gives a user a sense of ownership and control over the web browsing experience. Also, a layer of hardening and protection from malware and tracking websites. With the appropriate instruction, it's straightforward to implement as well. I do believe a few organizations were running awareness workshops where people did install Pi-hole and Raspberry Pis. I mean, there's a noticeable reduction in network traffic. Tracking data and telemetry data is blocked. And I think it also brings forth the idea of careful browsing behavior, because I think if you educate the people, you're strengthening the cybersecurity posture of an organization. So, and also a worry that, you know, a measurable and impactful proportion of web traffic consists of tracking and advertisements. So one of my recommendations would be use this in conjunction with a more secure or lockdown web browser. Now, I believe Trinity College Dublin, the School of Computer Science, they conducted a study comparing various browsers. It's quite recent. And using a combination of, say, Brave, which is very, very, you know, there's a strong emphasis on privacy, but it runs on the Google Chrome engine, so things work. That does not send data back home. All the other browsers that you could even think of always send data back home. So that's definitely something to think about and reflect upon. So to me, the conclusion is business of cybersecurity, it starts at home, and we've got to practice what we preach. Further developments, I would have liked to have implemented this on maybe some kind of server hardware, say like a PC running a Linux operating system, or something like an on-prem system. So that would have been my expansion. I would have also liked to have implemented DNSSEC or DNS over HTTPS. So adding that, it's almost like HTTP versus HTTPS, adding that layer of security, that secure aspect. I would have liked to have experimented with that and added that and seen that the effects of that on my browsing experience. I would have also liked to have improved the data ingestion pipeline. So Raspberry Pi was sending data to the cloud. Great, it worked. But for long-term use, something like this, which would store the data, which would make it, which would allow us to interrogate it better, would be more feasible, would be more sustainable. That's it. And thank you very much. Any kind of questions?
I've got a few questions for you. That was really good. First off, I can tell that you probably come from a technical background. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Mixture.